hasn't been too long since you've gotten into the ring, but how does it feel to be getting back with some of these old contemporaries?
I tell you what, the first thing I want to say, I want to thank the WWF for inviting me here tonight. I am very happy to see all the fellows that I knew before, way before. And you got a great champions around here today. Used to be anyway, and I'm glad to be here anyway.
What is it? How has wrestling changed from back in the '60s when you were in your prime to now?
Well, I tell you, today is a little faster and a little better than we were before. Believe me. They say, they grow bigger. Today kids are bigger and kids are faster. But you got to handle to the guys today. They wrestle. They work hard at it. So,
anybody in the ring today who you are particularly impressed with?
Well, yeah, this the Hulk Hogan. Yeah, I'm impressed with this guy very much because he looks big. He works hard at it. I think he's a great champion.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. So you're not wrestling tonight?
No.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask you.
You can ask me what I'm doing. I'll be glad to tell you.
Okay, I'll ask you what you're doing. I'll ask you about how wrestling's changed from when you were in your heyday to now. I'll ask you about Lou Thesz because we've done an extensive long interview with him in the past. And what's Freddie Blassie up to these days?
Freddie Blassie is the official prognosticator extraordinaire for WWF. And that's wherever we wrestle, I have 4 or 5 people working in the office. They make the contacts with different radio stations and newspapers, and then they tell me who to call, when to call, and what time to call, and what day to call, and for what town it is. And that's my job, because they say having a melodious voice like mine, you hear it once, you never forget it. And I have to say, Freddie Blassie makes that kind of an impression on people.
Freddie Blassie, looking back 20, 30 years when you wrestled to now, what is the difference between wrestling?
Let's start it officially. I started 53 years ago, this coming February. That's how long I'll be in the business. And it changed so much you wouldn't believe it. If the things that the fellas are doing today, if we'd have tried to attempt to do them when I was wrestling, we'd have gotten nosebleeds, like jumping off the top rope onto the floor and things. We never did anything like that because it was more or less just Greco-Roman and catch as catch can. Today it's much more spectacular. It's sports entertainment, something for everyone.
Freddie Blassie was one of the best drawing cards back even as much as 15 years ago, 10, 15 years ago. But it seems like you were so much smaller than the wrestlers today. If Freddie Blassie were starting out today, he would have a tough time.
Well, no, I don't think I'd have a tough time because I was more vicious, and I was the dirtiest thing. By saying dirty, I mean fellow used more illegal tactics than anyone else. I did it to them before they had a chance to do it to me. I only weighed 232 pounds, but if I once got a hold of you, I'd start chewing on the front, and I wouldn't end up until I got behind you. And my tactics were always, it's not what you do, but how you do it. Because if me, a referee is like the 5th post in the ring, useless. And the thing to do is do things that he doesn't catch you. Anybody can get out there and punch and hit and bite and kick and pull hair and things. But the thing is to do it and get away with them. See, there's 4 sides of the ring. There are those rings out there. And those spectators out there, those pencil neck geeks, they're always yelling, do this, do this. But the referee never did catch me. And with me, it was real science. And I believe I would fare pretty well today. In fact, I go to the gym 2, 3, 4 times a week and still work out. And as I said, I'm going to be 70 years old come this February. Don't I look good, women?
A gentleman who you know very well from St. Louis, Lou Thesz. People say he was the greatest wrestler of all time.
Well, now, Lou was good, but I come from St. Louis, too, you know. I mean, it was always debatable who was the best, Lou or myself. And I still think that I was the best. He said he was the best. And if he still wants to get in the ring, I'm still willing to get in the ring with him. I've had 2 total knee replacements, and I just had a hip replaced last October. And that pencil neck geek, I mean, I'll fight him fire with fire. He might stick to legal wrestling, but I'm not going to stick to legal wrestling. I don't claim to be the most scientific wrestler in the world. I just went out and won the majority of my bouts. That's all that counts, winning. That's my motto. Lou Thesz is good. You pencil neck geek, you, but you never seen a day you were better than classy Freddie Blassie.
Freddie Blassie still as mean as ever?
Still mean as ever. I've been married 8 times. People said, how come you get married so often? Well, they get old. You got to get new ones, you know. That's what I do. I'm on my 8th wife now. She's an Oriental girl. Not bad, but she's getting kind of old too. I'm looking for the 9th one.
Okay. Gene, it's been a long time. How's it feel to be getting back into the ring?
Well, it's just great. Like I've often said, I said it on numerous occasions, if anything has ever happened to me, never call a doctor. Throw me in a wrestling ring, and I know I'd be good for another 60 minutes. If you're any type of athlete at all your injuries, aches, and pains should leave you, whether you step on a basketball court, a hockey rink, football field, or a wrestling mat. Hey, that's the way we earn our living. It's been very, very good to me. And like I've said, put me in a wrestling ring, and I'm good like I've never, ever left. You don't forget anything. It's like an involuntary reflex. I go like this, you automatically blink. Once I step in that ring, where else can you make that type of money and get that adulation from fans? They boo you, they cheer you. What a beautiful way to make money. All my life, once I started school at the University of Arizona, being a Canadian, I went there on a football and wrestling scholarship, and then pro football and pro wrestling. I just cannot think of a nicer way to make a living.
Wrestling today and wrestling when you wrestle. What's the difference?
Well, just like airplanes, they used to have propellers on them. Now we're in the jet era. Everything has changed. It's faster. In football now, we have the different uniforms, the cheerleaders, they got horns, and they've got masks, and people just want a different, like, let's say, more pizzazz. But basically, it's still football, wrestling, hockey, whatever you want to call it.
Is it better?
Well, let's face it, the bottom line is how much you have in the bank at the end of the year. That's what counts. Go ahead, excuse me, I'm your guest.
I was just going to ask you, to change the subject a little bit, Lou Thesz, 6-time world champion, somebody you've wrestled before.
Well, I just felt anytime I stepped in the ring with Lou Thesz, it was a wrestling lesson. I always learned something, and he was a very, very good teacher. I'm very, very grateful that I got to wrestle him on so many occasions, because the experience I gained being in the ring with him has really helped me, and it's helped both my sons in wrestling. It's what you learn on the way up that counts.
Okay, great.
Before leaving, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you wonderful American people for allowing me home via TV, and you did a superb job. Thank you.
Thank you. Gene, if I could just ask you one thing?
Yes. I didn't do it, honestly, I didn't.
No, I don't know, just sitting here, I think that these guys may be at a disadvantage. You just retired a couple of months ago, and you're still in great shape.
They needed a kid on the block, so that's why I'm in it. And I can't say that, I mean, being second generation, these are people that from the time I was a baby, I was around, I knew the names, and which includes the world champion, former world champion Lou Thesz. He likes to tell the story about how I sat on his knee and wet all over him.
Speaking of Lou Thesz, one of the greatest wrestlers.
Yes.
What can you tell us about him?
Phenomenal. My father actually started him, and I never knew this for many years. They were very close, and I think the first time I ever wrestled Lou Thesz, I was 15 years old, and it was a demonstration in Santa Monica, California. And when my dad came home and said, "You're going to be on TV Sunday wrestling Lou Thesz," and at that time I weighed about 185 pounds. And I think my heart just stopped. As a high school kid who had been wrestling in high school and all my life, it was just phenomenal. And of course he wanted to do it, and they wanted to do it for the fact that he could say that when I was about 6 months old, I wet all over his pants. And then, of course, to be here tonight, someone else said, they says, what's really great about all of you guys is that all of you chose a certain profession, way of life, and stayed in it your entire life. And it was a woman, and she was saying it's amazing because she works with a lot of professional people, and she said careers change, people change jobs and occupations, but none of us have. We've been in it all our life. It's been great. I've loved every minute of it.
And you were in it 25 years ago, or at least? And up till
the 30-year mark,
30
easy,
years ago,
sure.
And a couple of months ago. And what has been the difference from day one to the last day?
I think what it really is, it's like everything in our day and age. It's up-tempo. The athletes today, I think, are good athletes. They're even better, as all the athletes have improved. I think the rules of the game allow it to improve, but I also say that the athletes today are taking far more chances than we did. A lot more of them are coming off the top rope. They're doing things, I guess they want that adulation that we had, and I guess they feel they've got to ascend to a higher level. And in doing so, they're taking far more chances. There's a lot more of them busted up and getting busted up and falling off to the wayside and dropping out of the picture. And, you know, you don't sell tickets with busted up wrestlers. But they are taking those chances, but they are great. They have my admiration totally.
Great. Thank you.
Good.
Whenever you're ready.
Tell me when you're ready. A lot of people were surprised that Lou Thesz, age 71, the oldest person in there, can go in there and win.
Well, it's a crazy thing. You know, Lou, one-on-one is a different situation, and in all fairness to the other men that were in there were 3 or 4 really top-flight wrestlers in there that I don't know how well I would fare with them in a complete match from bell time to a finish hold of some kind. I was kind of playing my cards kind of cute because I had a hip done a little over a year ago, but I discovered tonight that it's perfect and there's no problem, and I'm going to get into some singles again and see what I can do. And I really enjoyed doing this tonight. Bunch of old pros in there, guys that know where they're going and they've been around the horn, you know. And I was really careful, but I'm beginning to feel as if I can spread my wings now and take off and get some really competitive one-on-one matches.
You're really reflective. You should be happy that you won this thing.
Oh, I am happy. You know, the happiest thing, when I was a kid, when I was 20 years of age, I won the undisputed heavyweight championship of the world. And I certainly don't mean to minimize what we did tonight because it was great, you know, and I was really, really happy to be able to win it. But you take it in stride, and with the help that I had, Lou, I had Ed Stringer Lewis and a 3-time Olympic winner, Tregus and Ray Steele, and some of the really greats of the past. And I said this so many times, and not in jest, that under those conditions, a monkey could have picked it up, you know. And it's like I said earlier in another interview, right? It's like riding a bike, and once you know where you're going and you watch the people and you watch their feet and you have some kind of an idea where they're going and what they're up to. And I don't mean this makes it sound mysterious, but the only thing that's mysterious to us human beings is something we don't know, you know. And like animals with electric shock, they can't figure it out, so it frightens them, you know. And the same thing with us. And having devoted my entire life to this thing, I really do take it in stride, and I don't mean to be smart aleck about it, but I really do enjoy the game. And I so wish I could turn the clock back maybe even 20 years and start out at 50 or 51 again, and I'd travel the world again and do the same thing all over again. But I think I'll just stay in this country and pad my part as well as I can. And I'm sure that with a competitive match that I'd have some problems with some of these people, like I said before, but that's part of the game.
There's one thing I wanted to ask you, and it just slipped my mind. How did it feel to be back?
Oh, it's wonderful. Really, it's exhilarating to get back in there because, as you know, I've been off. This is really the first competitive match, something that's really important that I've done in 3 years. I wrestled a couple of other matches in Virginia and so forth, but people that were not really wrestling oriented, you know, and it wasn't really a fair contest. But tonight it was different. I was in there with some pros, and luckily they worked on each other, and I managed to eke it out at the end, you know, and it was just this kind of a fortunate thing. And O'Connor's a great competitor. The son of a gun can wrestle, and so can that Gene Kaniski and these guys, and it sounds like a boastful thing, but I really am very pleased to get the victory. And I may not be able to hold it up very long, I don't know. But I'm going to try again. I'm going to go on a one-on-one with one of these cats and see what I can do.
You and O'Connor at the end there, it was like back in the old days, real
Well,
wrestling.
we're wrestlers, you know. We were steeped in wrestling all our lives. I've devoted my entire life to it, and so has Pat. And I knew that if I would get in there with Bockwinkel or Pat or one or two of the other fellows, I knew we were going to end up with a wrestling match. And that's what happened, and I'm pleased about that. And maybe they'll give the folks a little bit of comparison to see what it was like years ago and what it's like today. And I know wrestling is a lot faster today, and it's really a lot more interesting for the wrestling fan. But for the person that's really into wrestling, sometimes maybe they'll enjoy that. The elderly people will. You see, we got an age group here, like maybe over 40 or over 45 or 50. They'll enjoy this. They'll remember what it was like yesteryear, you know.
Okay, great. If you can just lift the hat. There
you go, that's great. You got it?
Okay. Oh, this is quite a thing today, this old-timers battle royal. What can we expect?
Well, you never know. You know, these old timers there, you never know what they have left in them, and there'll be a lot of surprises out there tonight.
You wrestled 20, 30 years ago. How has wrestling changed since then?
Well, wrestling's changed quite a bit. That's boys are bigger and stronger and faster, but still it's wrestling. You still have to know your moves and how to wrestle, and it's not, everything's basically the same, only the boys are bigger and stronger.
I don't want to put you on the spot, but this gentleman who's sitting here, Lou Thesz, many consider him the greatest wrestler of all
Are
time.
you sure?
You've seen a lot.
And I've wrestled Lou before, and I know he's a great man.
Who is
He was the world's champion 4 times, I believe.
6?
6 times, I'm sorry.
What stands out in your mind when you think about your career in wrestling?
Well, I've really enjoyed myself wrestling because I always loved wrestling, and that was always my sport. And I've met a lot of great people through wrestling and met a lot of great competition, had a lot of good competition. I really enjoyed it.
Great. So, the first thing I got to ask you is, how you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you. And the world has been very good to me, and maybe I'm jumping the gun here, but I'm very happy to be back in wrestling togs again.
People, look and say, Lou Thesz, 71 years old, getting into the ring, he's got to be crazy.
Well, that isn't as crazy as it sounds, Many years ago, Ed Stringer Lewis, my very dear friend and mentor and my coach and so forth, he and a couple of other wrestlers were great friends, and I saw some photographs of wrestlers that were maybe 75 and 80 years of age in Europe, and they looked great, and I thought, well, if they can do it, why, perhaps I can. And I'm really pleased to be back in action, because Lewis like riding a bike, you don't forget that, and I'm really anxious to get back in there. It's going to be a fun trip.
Is this a one-time thing? You're going to do it more often?
It may be a one-time thing, and I had a total hip replacement a year ago, which doesn't bother me at all. I'm doing road work now. I'm doing a couple miles a day. I feel great, go to the gym 5 days a week, and that's all I can say. I'm ready to get back in action like an old war horse. I know I'll enjoy it. I always enjoyed wrestling. That was my first love, and I've devoted my entire life to it. And as a child, I started at 8 years of age, and out of the amateurs at 16, wrestling at 17 professionally, and traveled the world and has been very, very lucky and been able to be a world traveler and a citizen of the world, and without wrestling, I could not have done those things. I'm very pleased to be able to participate again.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much.
It's been a long time since you've been in the ring. How does this feel?
I think I feel good. It's nice to be back and see all my friends here. It's very nice,
What about keeping in shape all the,
Well, I have to. I practice mostly every day. I have a wrestling school in Montreal. And the young people keep me young. I try to be young.
I've got to ask you about Lou Thesz, somebody you wrestled before, 6-time world champion.
Oh, he's one of the best. He's one of the best. I know the name from Europe, because I come from France. And when I start wrestling, my idol is Lou Thesz. And I think he's one of the best men in the business, and still the best man today. Wrestling is wrestling.
What about wrestling today, as you see it?
It's completely different the before, It's more spectacular, more, I don't know in English, Entertainment? Yeah, that's it. But, you have to give the people what the people like. Today is the rock music, and I think the wrestling, you have to be rock too. Anyway, when you see the new wrestler, lots of guys know to wrestle. This is the first thing. You have to learn before you go in the ring.
Okay, great. How does it feel to be getting back in the ring with some of your contemporaries 20 years later?
Well, it's really not, for me, it's not 20 years later. I retired. I officially retired in 77. But, when I did retire, they wouldn't let me. That's what it amounted to. So a bunch of people got together and started calling me up, why don't you start teaching us wrestling, this one thing, that one, and I started wrestling school. So every once in a while, you find these guys who are training, after about a year, they think they're better than the teacher. So I have to prove to them such is not the case. And one thing I had to my advantage over the many years, when I first started professional wrestling, I gave a total commitment to it. I said, I'm going to be good. And so I studied foods and diets, and I became a vegetarian. I've been a vegetarian for 34 years, no meat, fish, or poultry. And I claim that has increased my endurance, because any professional wrestler in my time, in my era, can attest to the fact that I was a wrestling machine. I can go in that ring and just not stop. So I look at some guys today, and
why they have that haggard look about them. Of course, it's a little different wrestling today than it was then. Now the wrestling in Tokyo, Japan one night, the next night it might be Los Angeles, the next night after that they're down in New York City, and it's a little bit different now. So the traveling is really taking a tremendous toll on the professional wrestlers today. Whereas in my day, we did wrestle 4 or 5 days a week, but we could rest between matches and between the days because we didn't have those long trips that take the where to sap our energy away from us. And I look back and people ask me, would you like to be into this? And no, I've had enough. I've put all my time in, 25 years or so in a wrestling profession, and it comes to a point where it's just no more fun. It becomes a toil and a burden. So when I finally decided to hang it up, I said, this is about it for me. But I look back and it's, somebody asked me too, it says, would you do it again? I said, without hesitation, travel the world, and it's paid, everything was paid for. So at the same time, I had a lot of fun, I had a ball. I had a lot of wonderful people, Lou, you. In fact, we met, I think, over the phone before we even got here. And looking back, and says it was worth every moment of it. And even the friends today, you know, we were reminiscing, sitting in the dressing room, looking back at all the other wrestlers, you know, we started talking, thinking back, they brought the future. I mean, they brought the past into the present. I said, how wonderful this is. And we just sit and laugh. You could just hear the other guys discussing some of the past exploits. I think they were very, very funny, very humorous. And in fact, somebody should have a report in the dressing room just taking notes and all that, because that would make a tremendous program, just that alone. And I look back, I said, somebody asked me, you know, if you had a son, would you recommend this? Without hesitation, I tell them too. So this is it, this is terrific. But you have to have the size, and because you can't just, I have a lot of people, guys come up to me, you know, 175 pounds, they become professionals, so forget it. Today, they want to see the giants, they want to see the big men, and they want to see people who are dedicated to the profession. And it takes a lot of commitment, a lot of dedication to really show yourself. Because how can you express yourself? You can't go out in the alley and fight when you're 175 pounds. Cool people aren't touch you. They think you're a hoodlum, you're a bum. That's what bums and hoodlums are doing, fighting in the streets. But the athletes, the good men, the professionals, were fighting in front of the public for thousands and thousands of people. Even today, 93,000 people in Pontiac, Michigan. How can you get so many people to witness any kind of a sport? Only professional wrestling. I love it.
How has wrestling changed since the days, other than travel? It's a different game at this time.
Well, to tell you the truth, less wrestling. I'm from the Boston area. I went to the Boston Garden, and I watched them wrestle. I saw two men wrestle out there. They were tremendous just a few weeks ago. They were great. I said, man, this was thrilling. People having bawling. They want to see wrestling. They want to see the hype. They want to see this jumping off the top rope. They want to see somebody smashing somebody over the head with a table or with a chair. Where's wrestling gone? It changes with the climate. It changes with the crowd. It changes with the environment. That people want to see the hype. They want to see less wrestling, more spectacularism. Well, the bottom line is the dollar, drawing people, and that's what the people want, that's what they're going to get. You don't want to see wrestling, then you get the hype. Hey, bottom line, bucks.
A gentleman from your era that was one of the greatest of all time, Lou Thesz.
Lou Thesz was my mentor. When I first started wrestling, a young green kid, 17 years old, he took me under his wing to say, I could teach you a few things. That's been many years ago. I'm still learning. You never get to the point where you know it all. Because I watch television, I watch on television, I see these guys doing these moves, and I say, holy mackerel, who'd ever dream the athletic prowess of these guys, how they're able to get out there and move and fly around. So I said, we couldn't even dream of something like that in our era. So it's entirely different method, venture, entirely different sport altogether. It's exciting. Let's face it. It was exciting in our day. It's more exciting today. I love it too. But I couldn't do that with these guys doing holy mackerel. I'd be dead. Still, I look back and I look now and I look to the future. I say it's always going to be greater than it was before.
Great.
Well, how long am I talking with you? Want to talk for another hour?
What's your name?
You don't even have to mention it.
Okay.
How does it feel to be getting back in the ring again?
Well, to tell you the truth, I haven't left the ring very long because I was training some of the Japanese wrestlers on the Japanese professional tour And just 1 year ago, I trained a Japanese wrestler for 9 weeks, 4 hours a day for 9 weeks, and he was a 12-time national sumo champion of Japan.
How has wrestling changed? I'm sure you watch it now. How has it changed from now to when you wrestled?
Well, it has changed a lot. They've speeded everything up. The rules are more lax. They're allowed to do more things. I don't believe the wrestlers of today are taught the basic fundamentals of wrestling that we did years ago, and well, not too many years ago. And I think that the right down to basic wrestling, the wrestlers of 10 years ago were better wrestlers, better trained wrestlers than they are today. However, the rules are more lenient, and the regulations controlling makes it more spectacular. Rules have changed in all sports to make it public appealing. So wrestling has gone along with them too.
Gentleman by the name of Lou Thesz, somebody
Yes.
you've wrestled before. How would you describe him as a professionalist?
Oh, fantastic. I look back in the records that I had, over the years that I had been in and out of St. Louis, I had wrestled him 12 times. And we had stalemates. He had beaten me and I'd beaten him. So, you know, I don't know what the true score was, but out of those 12 matches, I would say that we'd spent at least 10 hours in the ring.
Wow. Anybody today who you were particularly impressed with in the ring?
Today? Oh, there's a lot of great athletes. The athletes today have better training methods and coaching if they want to stay with it. But like I said, everything is speeded up, that, you know, they want to get the high slams off the ropes and everything like that. But the basic fundamentals of wrestling will never change. Now, like my friend coached in the Olympics, he's an Olympic wrestling coach, and he gave me this jacket to wear tonight. And we wrestle, and he goes back to the basic fundamentals, and it's just fantastic. But the guys today are bigger. I would say that in some instances, they are better.
This has got to bring back some great memories to be back here wrestling guys you wrestled 20, 30 years ago.
Oh, yes, of course, it really does, because some of these guys I hadn't seen, like Kowalski, I hadn't seen him for, I think, almost 20 years. And it was really great to see him, because the moment I see him, I said, my gosh, I wrestled this guy so many times, and he beat on me and did all these things to me and everything. And here we are, I'm facing him today, and we've both been out of wrestling for quite a period, and we're going to go into this battle royal tonight, and it's great to see the guy, great to see all of them.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Wasn't it years ago, didn't you get hit by something at the Cobo Ring?
No, it was down in Cincinnati, the Valley, the Gardens.
What is it like for you to be getting back into the ring today with some of your contemporaries?
It's incredible. As a matter of fact, you mentioned Lou Thesz just a little while ago, and I can remember in Australia, Thesz was one of my idols because he's been wrestling since, 1936. I started in 38, and the odd part about all this is that one stage, Stronger Lewis, who managed Lou Thesz, was the gentleman that booked me throughout the United States back in 1952, when I wrestled fellas like Gorgeous George. I wrestled him a few times, and actually I've worked in 32 countries. I've been very, very fortunate. The good Lord above has given me the opportunity to travel. I've met kings and queens and maharajas all through a little gift, wrestling. I'm very appreciative to it, and the fact that I'm here with Lou Thesz, well, that's a dream come true, actually.
Looking at wrestling today and in your time, what do you see as the major differences?
Well, I think that the men that you've interviewed recently have just spoke about that, and I go along with the same premise. Wrestling is a great art, a great sport. To be a good wrestler, you have to have ability and personal pride. To be successful, you have to have colour. How do you define colour? You know, I can remember years ago in my dad's fruit store in Sydney, Australia, I used to tell the customers, I'm going to Madison Square Garden, I'm going to sell out Madison Square Garden. They looked at me, this guy's nuts. Madison Square Garden. All I would do is sell cabbages here in Rockdale, New South Wales, Australia. Well, 20-odd years later, I'm sitting in Madison Square Garden. There's 20,000 inside, 10,000 breaking the doors to get in. I'm involved in the main event. I'm thinking, the chase was much more illuminating than the actual realization of my dream. The realization of the dream was sort of a letdown for the simple reason I'm expecting something. There's nothing, because once you're in the top spot, it's twice as tough to stay there. It's an incredible, it has been an incredible, and I'm very, very appreciative, and the gentleman that gave me that opportunity at Madison Square Garden was Vince McMahon Sr. He is, I'm very proud to be associated with Vince McMahon Jr. But he was the one that really groomed us for Madison Square Garden.
From the Isle of Malta, as rugged as they come, Baron Miguel Cicluna. This next individual possessed one of the finest physiques ever in professional wrestling, Sailor R. Thomas. And one of the greatest professional wrestlers ever from Puerto Rico, and the only man to hold all 3 World Wrestling Federation titles in his career, Pedro Morales. This man's aerial skills led to his being called the Flying Frenchman, Edouard Carpentier. And introducing one half of one of the greatest wrestling tag teams ever, the original Kangaroo, Al Costello. Former heavyweight champion, as rough as they come, from Montreal, Canada, Gene Kininsky. Another former co-holder of the World Wrestling Federation Tag Team title, from Canada, Gino Brito. Ladies and gentlemen, when you say Cocoa Butt, one name comes to mind. From Benton Harbor, Michigan, Bobo Brazil. Another former tag team co-holder, always giving 100% in the ring, Dominic DiNucci. Quite simply speaking, this man is the man who made Milwaukee famous, the Crusher. One of professional wrestling's all-time greats, and a master at his craft, Nick Bockwinkel. Another all-time wrestling great from New Zealand, former heavyweight champion, Pat O'Connor. And from San Francisco, this man has battled with the best of them. I'm speaking of Ray, the Crippler Stevens. Known in wrestling circles as the #1 Frenchman and former tag team co-holder, Rene Goulet. And the greatest Indian wrestler of all time, Chief Terry Strongbow. This next individual is also a former heavyweight champion and truly one of professional wrestling's all-time greats, Lou Thesz. Next is one of the roughest men ever to enter the ring area. Many opponents have suffered at the hands of his iron claw, Killer Kowalski. Last but not least, one of the World Wrestling Federation's most popular individuals, the Golden Boy, Arnold Skaaland.
Ray, I saw on Lou Thesz. You know who he is? I mean, can you count from here? In total, where is it? I don't know. At least for now. Just for now. Lou, stop hitting the tripod.
of this battle royal, Lou Thesz.